In my life, I've known many people who have smoked marijuana, either recreational or legally through medical marijuana. I've seen a lot of the benefits. I've seen some of the downfalls, but the majority of what I have seen is benefits. Now, what I want to propose is a question for you. What do you think the United States could do with the income that is generated from the legalization of marijuana? Me personally, I think they could do a whole lot. Um, but there's some other things to consider first before we get into the money aspect. Um, a couple of things about marijuana that I found out while doing my research is that I found that marijuana is safer than alcohol and tobacco, two of which are legalized substances. I used to be a tobacco smoker, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done to try and stop that stuff. Never been a real big alcohol drinker, but I know a lot of people that are alcoholics, and it's impossible for them to stop. Then, on the other hand, I have the medical marijuana or the recreational marijuana users, which I have known they can just stop. There's not any side effects in most cases. And most of those people, they say that marijuana is a gateway drug. Well, the people that I've known that smoke marijuana never go and say, hey, I smoke marijuana, let's try something different. They're typically pretty happy with what they have. Um, Another thing about it is the amount of money that would go into our communities by legalizing marijuana. It would help sustain other programs like the teacher fund, helping poor people, with financial aids, and so on and so forth, beautification processes and whatnot. Uh, with the alcohol and tobacco and marijuana, I want to do a brief comparison showing the death rates between the three drugs. In the first, each year, there's an estimated 443,000 people that die prematurely due to alcohol and tobacco. And also even exposure to secondhand smoke. And then there's another 8.6 million people who live with serious illnesses like cirrhosis of the liver, lung cancer, emphysema, so on and so forth. Um, just alcohol alone, there's 80,000 deaths a year that are attributed to the excessive alcohol use each year in the United States alone. As as a primary cause of death by marijuana compared to comparable prescription medications, it showed that the primary suspect between marijuana and FDA approved drugs in deaths, marijuana 0. FDA approved drugs 10,008 a year. For as a secondary suspect, marijuana was 279 deaths, and FDA approved drugs is 1,679 as a secondary cause. And total deaths that were reported were 279 for marijuana users and 11,687 for FDA approved drugs. Now, to me, that says there's something wrong here. Stuff you can get from your doctors is killing you more than a natural herb. Now, as for the money part of the whole business, it costs the government a collectively $42 billion annually to keep marijuana off the streets. They tried this once before with alcohol, with the prohibition, and there ended up being just more crime, smuggling, and everything, in which we have a problem with nowadays. But they eventually saw the light and they legalized alcohol. So maybe they should take the same steps with marijuana. Um, the revenue that the U.S. could bring in if marijuana was legalized, it varies annually on how much money monetary value is collected from confiscating marijuana, but the estimated is between 10 to 120 billion dollars. It all depends on the quality and quantity and what people are doing, smugglers are doing that year, on what it is, and the rates of what the sellers are selling it for. Um, but that's the amount that is confiscated every year by the government. Um, if we took that and we taxed marijuana and put it in the same category as alcohol and tobacco, it would bring an additional $26,379,985 into the United States to use in other areas of much needed programs. I know it's tricky, but we need to apply the same laws that are associated with alcohol and tobacco. Instead of confiscating marijuana, people should have a license to sell it and be taxed as an independent business owner. As well as the merchandise being taxed. If I remember the last time I bought a pack of cigarettes, there was 40% tax on them. Cigarettes are cheap. It's just the taxes that you're paying for. Um, and of course, I believe that marijuana, you know, should be treated as if it were alcohol. You're going to have the same rules and regulations. You should have DUI laws. You can't be high and go to work. You can't be high and driving. You can't do that stuff. You got to use it responsibly. Use it in your own free time and be responsible about it. In conclusion, marijuana is a drug, but it's a prohibition drug. It's just like alcohol was less than 100 years ago. No matter what the government does, there will always be those people who want to break the rules. But by legalizing the use of marijuana, the United States could apply the money that is generated to much needed programs, government programs to help assist people, veterans, medically, work, schools, low income families, so on and such forth, etc., etc. Let people make a profit off the product that is an all natural product. Require them to have a business license and pay taxes. It would cut down on crime and boost the economy. Why are we waiting to do this? They say it's a gateway drug. That's what is holding us back. I think there needs to be more research done on the government's part on what it really is all about. Maybe they need to talk to real people who indulge. Thank you. And I hope this persuaded you to think a little bit harder about the legalization of marijuana.